makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
A few days ago, I made a video on Dave Chappelle's latest Netflix special, which was really nothing more than an hour of punching down comedy, bad comedy, against every letter in the LGBT community, especially trans people. His transphobia has been what has gotten the most attention, but it's not just limited to trans people. So one of the more disturbing bits in this special was towards the end of the special, he brings up a so-called friend called Daphne Dorman. Daphne was a trans comedian who unfortunately killed herself shortly after his 2019 special when he mentioned her anecdotally during that show. And he goes on to imply that, he tells the story of how he invited her to open for him at a show in San Francisco and that she absolutely bombed. And he doesn't fail to mention how many times during the show she bombed. He mentions it like 6-7 times at least, and despite this, she later defended him on Twitter when he started getting accusations of transphobia. And shortly after that incident, she killed herself. And so Dave Chappelle basically not only uses her as the excuse of like, hey, I had this trans friend, I can't be transphobic, but also accuses the trans community of basically being responsible for her death by bullying her on Twitter. So this obviously seems suspect because anyone who knows anything about trans people knows that they are a community that suffers some of probably the worst mental health indicators and suicide indicators of any minority on earth. And many trans people have to suffer from depression, suffer from PTSD, they suffer from, ongoing traumas. And so really the triggers that could get one of them to commit suicide is almost ever present. So for him to specifically say that the supposed bullying that she got from other trans people on Twitter was what led to her dying is, well, completely unverifiable, to be honest. But recently, her former roommate made a very long post on Facebook where she basically debunked this argument. So I'm going to read parts of that statement to show what really was going on with Daphne. So I'm going to start here. People ask me if she killed herself because of Dave Chappelle mentioning her in his 2019 special because she ended her life just 1 week after it came out. Daphne met Chappelle at a comedy club while he was performing. He was telling controversial jokes and she was laughing because she always had a dark sense of humor. But Daphne never told racist jokes or punched down on groups of people. She used humor to heal from pain. She told self-deprecating jokes and used humor to educate people about trans issues. She never used humor to be hateful. Before Chappelle's 2019 special, he regularly buttered her up, promising to mentor her and take her under his wings. I was suspicious of his antics and didn't really appreciate his style of humor, but I was happy for Daphne if she was happy. I watched part of Chappelle's 2019 special when it came out because Daphne was so excited for it, but I couldn't even finish it because I felt it was so offensive to different marginalized groups. But I didn't want to criticize it because I knew Daphne was excited for the shout out, even though the mention of her was so quick you could miss it. Then after Daphne died, it was crickets from this is the important bit, okay? Then after Daphne died, it was crickets from Dave Chappelle for months and years after it happened. When a group of her theater comedy friends threw a memorial for her in San Francisco, Chappelle didn't say anything. When her funeral in Pennsylvania happened a couple of months later, Chappelle's team hadn't reached out to her friends or family. When we planned another memorial for her in San Francisco, we didn't hear anything from his team. It was like if he said something about her, he would admit that he was responsible for her death. This one bit is also important. I'm not going to say I know for sure 100% that Chappelle making fun of Daphne in his 2019 special is what caused her death. I don't think it was the main cause, but who knows? Daphne had PTSD from a life of trauma, and she had battled suicidal thoughts for years. I think the final blow was a combination of her losing custody over her daughter, losing her job, and dealing with a lot of transphobic harassment on the streets of San Francisco. I lived with her, and yet I don't know how bad she was feeling. So, seems to me all these factors are kind of a bit more traumatizing to a human being than I got bullied on Twitter. I mean, come on, be honest. And imagine just the sense of desperation that you're living in quite possibly the most liberal city in the United States, and you still get constant harassment. So I heard from a friend that Dave Chappelle mentioned her last year in a stand-up comedy routine, and he mentioned how he let her open for one of his stand-up routines, but that she bombed it. So he doesn't just say once, like I said, that she bombed her performance. He said it like 6-7 times, constantly. For him to patronize her, demean her, and minimize her talent after her death is cruel and crass. For him to invoke her name as a free pass to continue being transphobic is beyond fucked up. In the latest Netflix special, he starts off his piece about trans people with, quote, I'm not saying trans women aren't women, but then he calls trans vaginas, quote, beyond pussy, rolls eyes, and then he says he is a TERF, and self-describes himself as transphobic multiple times in the special. Yeah. So I'm gonna skip some bits. Yeah. I don't even know how he found that out because her friends and family. So he's talking about how she killed herself. He found out because her friends and family didn't say that publicly because it's private and painful. And beyond that, studies have shown that mentioning specifically how people kill themselves only causes more suicides, but Dave doesn't care. He continues, as hard as it is to hear a joke like that, Daphne would have loved that joke. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't, but she killed herself and can't defend herself anymore. He goes on to say, I don't know what the trans community did for her, but I don't care because she was my tribe. He says Daphne killed herself because trans people were criticizing her on Twitter. So he's blaming trans people for causing her death. What the fuck? That's some next level victim blaming gaslighting. He ends his mockery of her by saying he wants to tell Daphne's daughter, I knew your father and he was a wonderful woman. I showed this bit in the last video I made, and it was disgusting. It is disgusting. Dave Chappelle doesn't give a fuck about trans people. This is true. He doesn't. He deliberately goes out of his way to make fun of us, even making fun of his alleged friend after her death. If you are reading this and made it this far, please take a moment to ask Netflix to remove this hateful special, not because it might offend trans people, but it might inspire more people to end their life. Daphne Dorman deserved better. Yeah. No, it was disgusting. I mean, there's a debate to be had on whether Dave Chappelle should be canceled. First of all, it's not up to like normal people to decide whether a celebrity can be canceled. And to be honest, the bar for celebrities to get canceled is really, really high, as in Louis C.K. high. So I don't think that Dave Chappelle, even if everyone wanted him canceled, would get canceled. Having said that, I do think that his special is incredibly offensive. It's not funny, and it should be taken down. I completely agree with it. It has nothing to offer anything. And now let's watch a snippet of that special where he implies that it was bullying from the trans community that got her killed.
Beautiful tweet, beautiful friend. That took a lot of heart to defend me like that. And when she did that, the trans community dragged that bitch all over Twitter. For days, they was going in.
So apparently the whole trans community did that. Now, there's awful people on Twitter. I'm sure there is plenty of awful trans people on Twitter. No community will get a free pass in terms of behaving awfully on Twitter. So yeah, I've not seen that tweet. I've not seen the replies. I'm sure she got some pretty incendiary replies. I don't think that's the way one should respond to these things with insults or hatred. But that's Twitter. What can we do about it?
In on her, and she was holding her own because she's funny. But 6 days after that wonderful night I described to you, my friend Daphne killed herself.
And note how he continually describes her as my friend. You know, if she was really your friend, you would have hung out with her more. You know, promised that mentorship that you claimed you were going to do. You would have at least gone to her funeral or one of her memorial services. You should have done something. You should have given some evidence. You should have at least had your team reply back to her friends and family saying, "Hey, I can't make it." That's the least you could have done. But for apparently, he couldn't even bother doing that.
Oh, yeah. It's a true story. My heart was broken. Yeah, it wasn't the jokes. I don't know if it was them dragging her. I don't know what's going on in her life, but I bet dragging her didn't help.
So that's the implicit, yeah. It had something to do with it. When, again, he clearly wasn't that close of a friend to know what else was going on in her life.
I was very angry at them. I was very angry at her. I felt like Daphne lied to me. She always says she identified as a woman. And then one day she goes up to the roof of a building and jumps off and kills herself. Clearly. Only a man would do some gangster shit like that.
By the way, that is the general quality of the jokes in this whole special. I'm not joking. Don't believe me. Watch it yourself. And please, if you're the type that's going to defend Dave Chappelle against any accusation, I would love it if in the comments you wrote exactly which joke in this whole special or which segment will go down in history as being, you know, a revolutionary bit of stand-up comedy. I dare you to.
Hear me out. As hard as it is to hear a joke like that, I'm telling you right now, Daphne would have loved that joke. That's why she was my friend.
So apparently, so the only trans people that can be Dave Chappelle's friends are basically trans people who can laugh at trans jokes, however offensive they might be. That is the standard for Dave Chappelle to accept a trans friend in his life. And like I said, not really a friend. And he's just using her in this special to whitewash his transphobia, using the lamest argument in the book, the lamest one. Because how many times have you heard people say, I'm not homophobic, I have a gay friend. I'm not racist, I have a black friend. How many times did Milo Yiannopoulos back in the day say he wasn't racist because he had a black boyfriend? It's that kind of shit. That's the same argument he's been using all this time. And he's using Daphne for that. And it's honestly, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Just tells what a colossal asshole Dave Chappelle is nowadays.
I was reading her obituary, and I found out she was survived by a daughter.
Okay, this bit I showed in the last video. So the only other part of the special that I want to show is, okay, well, towards the end, he during the credits, he basically shows a lot of pictures with other people, and he even dedicates this this special to someone. Surely it's going to be Daphne, right? Surely there's going to be at least one picture with Daphne, right? I mean, she is the butt of his jokes for like 20 minutes in this special, so surely she deserves at least a mention in the star-studded credits. Let's watch. Any signs of Daphne so far? Nope. Still no signs of Daphne. No, we've seen Bill Murray, Jon Stewart, Kevin Hart, all these other famous people that he, hiking with David Letterman. Where's Daphne? Surely she's gonna be the final picture with a big dedication, right? Of course. That's what a friend would do. Even John friggin' Meyer is in the picture. But like I said, I'm getting ahead of myself. She's at the end, right? Oh, it's for Norm Macdonald. That's who this special is dedicated to. Not his friend Daphne, Norm Macdonald. Don't get me wrong, I love Norm Macdonald. I think he was incredibly funny. It's absolutely heartbreaking to know that he died, but I'm not sure Norm had any role in this special. And I think if you're going to spend like 15-20 minutes of your show talking about one person who passed away and making her both the butt of your jokes as well as the way in which you're trying to cleanse and whitewash your transphobia, I think the very least that he could have done was dedicate this special to Daphne. But no, it's for Norm. Do I need any more evidence of what a colossal douchebag Dave Chappelle is? Do I need any? I don't think I do. I think if you're smart enough to have seen this, you realize the kind of person that Dave Chappelle has become, a resentful egomaniac. And I say resentful because the root of his transphobia and the root of his hatred, and it is hatred to the LGBT community, is because he feels, and I mentioned this in the previous video, so please watch this, watch that video so I can explain this more elaborately. He's resentful at the fact that the LGBT community has advanced further than Black people in terms of social acceptance. That's what he's resentful of. And you would think that, he is right in, he doesn't say it, but it's clear that he's resentful at the fact that racism runs deeper than homophobia. Probably not deeper than transphobia, because trans people, that's the letter in LGBT that is definitely not yet nearly as socially accepted as the others. That's why it's such a big, that's why it's really kind of the struggle, the social struggle of our times in terms of accepting a minority or a social group into mainstream society. They still have a long way to go. But in many respects, especially in a year where we had all these protests over BLM, George Floyd, etc., it's obvious that racism is not just not gone, it's in many ways gotten worse. And clearly, as a Black person, he definitely knows that. But why, the reason that Black people or the reason that racism is still so prevalent in society is not because of LGBT people. It's because of white people. And that used to be the people that he would punch up towards in his previous style of comedy. What do LGBT, why is it their fault? You know, this is a classic. This is really, he's falling for the same shit that like a lot of alt-right white people, in that they see that, you know, immigrants have integrated in society, maybe gotten good jobs, maybe are you know, equally if not better off than they are, and they haven't seen themselves advance in society, and instead of blaming the system, instead of blaming capitalism for why they have all their problems, they'll blame the immigrants. That's the exact same thing that he's doing. He's blaming, his issue is minorities integrated into mainstream society, and an end to all the phobias that these minorities face. And he's resentful at the fact that Black people have not advanced in that sense, as, for example, gay people have. But that's not gay people's fault. It's not their fault. Anyway, I don't know what to say. But yeah, he's a douchebag, and he's a transphobe. That's this isn't a free speech issue. He is a transphobe, and we need to call him for what he is. So, yeah, on that note, if you like this video, please like, please share. Most importantly, please subscribe, and do watch my previous video on him as well, which I will link to in a second or two. So, see you next time.